Shalom, friends. Akiva Gersh here, and I want to share with you an incredible story that took place during Israel's War of Independence in 1948. Now, here in Israel this year, we're celebrating 75 years since the creation of the State of Israel, which is an incredible accomplishment. Let's even call it a miracle. But especially when you know what it took to create the state. In the decades leading up, the early years of Zionism, and during the War of Independence itself, it was not a given that the state would come to existence and survive. Now, this War of Independence ironically begins even before the state was declared. At the end of November 1947, the UN passed a resolution in favor of the establishment of a Jewish state in this land. The Jews around the world celebrated. The Arabs got ready for war. And the very next day, that war began here in this land against local Arabs. And that went on for 6 months. They were also supported by the countries around Israel, but the British were still here for 6 more months. So they weren't going to full on attack. And when the moment came in May of 1948, when the British were getting ready to leave, the Jewish leadership had to make a very, very big decision. Do we establish the state right now? Do we declare the independence of the Jewish state here and now, or do we wait for the end of the war? But we don't know what this war is going to be. We don't know where it's going to bring us. We don't know what the results of the war are going to be. They also had to take into consideration the fact that the Arab leadership of the countries around Israel told the Jewish leadership in this land that if you dare declare a country, we are going to attack you. Taking all that in mind, they decided we are still going to declare independence, and that took place on May 14th, 1948. Now let's just back up a little bit and say while the British were still here, it was very, very difficult for the Jewish fighters, which wasn't even really, part of a real army, to get ammunition, to get supplies, to get the things that they needed to fight this war, to defend themselves, and to be victorious so that they can get to that place of May 14th and declare the state. And they can get to that place of winning the war and being the new Jewish state that it would become. So what did they do? Now, all kinds of amazing things happened in order to make sure that the Jewish fighters had what they needed. One of the things that happened was creating a bullet factory, an undercover bullet factory, because the British were not allowing in the import of ammunition. The British made it illegal for Jews to bring in weapons, for Jews to bring in ammunition, and for Jews to make their own weapons and ammunition. So they basically did it under the noses, so to speak, and in secrecy, in a way that the British would never find out. This took place not too far from Tel Aviv. Today, it is called the Ayalon Institute, the Bullet Factory. It's also known as. And basically, it looked like a kibbutz. It looked like this communal kind of setting where people got trained to live on kibbutzim, on these communal kind of villages, and then from there go out to other places to actually live and to help and to work. And so on this land, which was right down the road from a British army base, the Jews there who were planning this secret undercover bullet factory, they built a couple of buildings. They built a bakery and they built a laundry. But underneath it, what they built first was this huge hole in the ground. And in that hole in the ground, they built the bullet factory deep into the ground with 2 entrances, right? One going up into the bakery and one going up into the laundry. Now, nobody on this kibbutz, nobody in this training center knew about this except for the handful of people that were actively and directly involved in building it and in working there. Once it was all done, you couldn't tell anything. The bakery was a bakery. The laundry was a laundry. They took orders. They supplied the food and laundry services to the area, including British soldiers themselves, who would come and bring their dirty laundry and pick it back up from there. Eventually, the Jews working and running the secret bullet factory got so scared that there were these British soldiers coming to, bring and then pick up their laundry. They said, you know what, we're going to deliver it to you. Don't worry. And this went on for quite a long time, and millions of bullets were produced in this underground bullet factory. Now, a couple of interesting sub stories as part of this bigger story, things that they did to not get found out. Now, they make bullets, right? But they have to test the bullets. But how do you test bullets without being heard? So there was a train that went right by the bullet factory, and they knew the schedule. So they scheduled the testing of the bullets, the shooting of the bullets in this underground bullet factory for exactly when the train went by, so that the noise of the train would cover up the noise of the firing of these weapons and the testing of these bullets. The people who worked there were working there for many, many hours at a time underground, so they weren't getting the normal suntans that the rest of the workers on this training farm were getting by being out in the fields. And they couldn't show up to lunch or to dinner, all pale, and very different than the other people, where it would spark curiosity and get people asking questions, what's going on. So they had a little, maybe it was the first tanning salon. They had this little infrared kind of booth where people would sit in to make sure that their skin, got a little bit of color, so they wouldn't stick out so much amongst the rest of the people, from the community. And in this way, a small handful of Jews with an incredible idea, a risky idea, were able to create, produce, and supply millions of bullets to the Jewish fighters fighting on the front lines of the War of Independence, a war that literally determined the future of the Jewish people, not only here in Israel, but in the entire world.